To the outside world, it was the ultimate brotherhood. It was a story told in chrome and leather, in the thunder of engines on a desert highway at dusk. A modern legend forged not in battle, but on the open road, and in the quiet, smoky rooms where decisions were made. They were the living embodiment of a code that prized loyalty above all else, a bond that seemed unbreakable, forged in shared miles and whispered confidences. The public, the prospects, even rival clubs, they all bought into the narrative. Because they needed to. In a world of shifting allegiances, their partnership felt like the one fixed point, a North Star of outlaw integrity. It was a powerful myth, and for a long time, they were its most devoted guardians, carefully curating every public appearance, every handshake, to reinforce the legend. At the center of it all were the two pillars, the elder statesman and his trusted lieutenant. The statesman was the architect, the keeper of the club's history and its soul. He was the voice of reason, the steady hand on the tiller who had navigated them through storms that would have shattered lesser men. His words carried the weight of history, and his silence was more powerful than 1,000 threats. He had earned his throne not through brute force, but through a deep understanding of people, what they feared, what they desired, and what they were willing to trade for a sense of belonging. He was the past and the present, and then there was the lieutenant. He was the future, the enforcer of the code, the sharp edge of the club's will. Where the statesman was contemplative, he was decisive. He was the one who translated vision into action, the one who ensured the president's word was law. He moved with a quiet intensity, a coiled spring of ambition and fierce loyalty. To the younger members, he was a hero, proof that respect was earned, not given, and that loyalty would be rewarded. He was the heir apparent, the student who seemed destined to one day become the master. The myth suggested a perfect loyalty, a seamless partnership built on respect and the code. It was a story of succession, of a natural order. The old lion teaching the young wolf how to hunt, preparing him to one day lead the pack. Every shared glance, every quiet nod across a crowded room was interpreted as another chapter in this epic of mentorship. They were two sides of the same coin, their strengths perfectly complementing each other. One provided the wisdom, the other, the strength. One built the foundation, the other guarded its walls. This was the story they told themselves too. In the beginning, it was even true. They had ridden thousands of miles together, faced down threats from the outside, and built an empire on a handshake. Their bond was the bedrock of the entire organization. But what fans didn't see, what even the rank and file couldn't comprehend, was the razor-thin line between mentor and rival. Power is a current that flows between two poles, and over time, that current began to change. The student's ambition, once a source of strength for the partnership, began to cast its own shadow. The mentor's wisdom, once a guiding light, started to feel like a cage. Respect can curdle into resentment. Loyalty can become a leash. Behind the closed doors, the quiet conversations became less about shared goals and more about subtle negotiations of power. The unspoken question hung in the air at every meeting. When does the student stop learning and start planning? The perfect brotherhood was a beautiful, powerful lie. And like all lies, it was destined to unravel. Their relationship was never about friendship. It was a constant, unspoken negotiation of power. Christie was Barger's necessary heir, a brilliant and ruthless strategist. Barger was Christie's gatekeeper, always testing, always demanding proof of loyalty. They needed each other to lead the club, but their egos were simply too big for one table. In stories like these, the ending is always written off as a cliché. A fight over money, a dispute over a woman. Simple, primal conflicts that are easy to understand. But the truth is rarely that simple. The relationship fractured not over the contents of a lockbox or the affections of a passing stranger, but over something far more fundamental, far more absolute. Control. It was a battle fought in silence, waged over the vision of the future. One saw the club as a fortress, a sanctuary to be defended, its traditions preserved like sacred texts. He believed in consolidation, in strengthening the walls they had already built, ensuring the brotherhood remained pure, undiluted. The other saw the horizon not as a boundary, but as an invitation. He envisioned an empire, an ever-expanding network, where their influence would stretch across state lines, where their name would be whispered with the same reverence in new cities as it was at home. For months, the tension was a third presence in every room they shared. It was too thick to cut, a low hum of dissonance beneath the roar of engines and the clinking of glasses. You could feel it in the way meetings would stall, in the pregnant pauses that followed a seemingly innocent question. Power, once a unified force, had become a contested territory. It was too divided. Every decision became a negotiation. Every favor granted was an IOU logged on a mental ledger. Allegiances were tested not with grand declarations, but with quiet conversations in parking lots and subtle nods across a crowded room. The old guard, loyal to the founder, saw the lieutenant's ambition as a threat to their soul. The younger members, hungry and restless, saw the old man's caution as a chain holding them back. The center could not hold because the very definition of their purpose was being pulled in two opposing directions. And so, it ended. Not with a bang, not with the drawing of weapons or a brawl in the clubhouse yard. There was no shouting match to be overheard. It ended with the cold, quiet precision of a chess master cornering a king. It was a calculated, devastating political move. A motion raised in a carefully orchestrated meeting. A vote called when key loyalists were conveniently absent. An obscure bylaw, long forgotten, was suddenly resurrected and weaponized to redefine leadership, to shift the balance of power irrevocably. It was bloodless, but it was brutal. A coup executed not with steel, but with ink and procedure. The air didn't explode, it simply went still. The sound of that gavel falling was quieter than a whisper, but it echoed like a cannon shot through the foundations of their world. The betrayal wasn't sudden, it was inevitable. It was the final, logical step in a long journey of diverging paths. It was the consequence of two powerful men looking at the same horizon and seeing two completely different futures. One man rode away, not exiled, but obsolete. The other stood in the quiet clubhouse, the map of his new empire spread before him, finally in sole possession of the control he craved. But the silence that followed was heavier than any argument, a stark reminder that in winning the future, he had fractured the past forever. In the mythology of the outlaw world, some stories are told so often they become gospel. The bond between Sonny Barger and George Christie was one of them. For decades, it was presented as the bedrock of the Hells Angels West Coast dynasty, the founder and his chosen diplomat, the Iron Fist, and the Velvet Glove. But the real relationship between Sonny Barger and George Christie was something else entirely. It was a masterclass in how power, slowly and methodically, corrupts even the deepest bonds. It wasn't the simple friendship that admirers and law enforcement alike imagined. It was a complex, decades-long rivalry that ultimately defined not just their lives, but the very soul of the club they built. This wasn't a feud of fists and fury fought in a dusty parking lot. It was a cold war, waged in whispers, in backroom meetings, and through calculated political maneuvers. Every decision, every public statement, every alliance formed was a move on an invisible board. Barger, the patriarch, saw the club as a tribe bound by an unyielding, old-school code. His authority was absolute, rooted in history and legend. Christie, the strategist, saw the need for evolution. He believed the club's survival depended on its ability to navigate the modern world, to negotiate with its enemies, and to present a more sophisticated face to the public. His vision was one of influence, not just intimidation. This fundamental difference created a fracture line that ran deep beneath the surface of their brotherhood. For years they managed it. They were allies of convenience, their skills complementing each other. Barger had the legacy, Christie had the diplomacy, but power is a zero-sum game. As Christie's influence grew, as he became the face of the angels in the media and the go-between for law enforcement, it was perceived not as a service to the club, but as a challenge to the throne. Loyalty was tested, not with grand gestures, but with small, quiet demands for allegiance. Brothers were forced to choose sides, often without even realizing they were doing so. The final break wasn't a single explosive event. It was the culmination of 1,000 tiny betrayals, 1,000 moments of quiet resentment. It was the slow, grinding erosion of trust until nothing was left but the raw calculus of control. And now, with the key players gone from the board, the true cost of that rivalry is finally being revealed. It's a cost measured not in dollars or territory, but in broken friendships, fractured loyalties, and a legacy forever debated. The story of Sonny and George is more than just the history of two men. It's a timeless, cautionary tale about the intoxicating allure of power, the weight of legacy, and the tragic human price of holding on too tightly, until the very thing you sought to protect is what you ultimately destroy. Please subscribe to our channel, History Documentary Hub, for more insightful videos and intriguing content.